Next hit. Hey, one. Got the French. Gonna get everything out of the way this turn. So we'll check it out and see if we have anything we want to move forward with in charges. I was looking at the board, trying to decide if there's any French cavalry charges I want to make, and I realized I totally forgot to move the 2nd Prussian Cavalry Brigade. Can't decide if I should give them a break, move them up as intended, so I'm going to give them a break and move them up as intended. So there's my makeup move. Just shifted them over here in the skirmish mode. Oh well. Teach me to pay closer attention. But there are no French charges I want to make, so I'm just going to move straight into the French movement phase. Didn't accomplish very much at Quatre. It was mainly a desperate pullback here by the remnants of the 6th Division, and then just thought it might be faster to move through the woods here rather than to try to take it south of the woods and come up down there. So this heavy cavalry will end up somewhere in here, maybe the next turn. 1st Division, the 1st Corps moved up a little bit. Still a ways to go to meet the enemy, but they're a little lonely and they're not going to be too aggressive until they get some support. Got a little aggressive with the 3rd Corps here. With that last turn, the retreats, a little gap opened up there, so they decided to put some pressure on the 5th Brigade there and declared some assaults, put some units in place to pour some fire onto them, see if that'll do any damage. In the middle here, the Guard. So the Young Guard is going to make an assault here, and those are 2 full regiments. Didn't break them down into their battalion counters. They're going to hit these 2 Prussians and hopefully start to roll back the area here. They also prolong the guns right up next to the Prussian guns now. These are fully suppressed. One of the units here is suppressed. I don't think the other one should be suppressed just because they're now stacked together. But otherwise, the Prussians will get to fire some defensive fire at that huge park of guns there for the French Guard. Otherwise, had to shift the Grenadiers over here simply to get some ammunition wagons up into place. Man, I hate those ammunition wagons. What a pain in the neck. But then the 4th Heavy Reserve Corps Heavy Cavalry has come into position right here. I guess if we can open things up, they'll get across and maybe charge at the French 8th Brigade there. Or excuse me, Prussian 8th Brigade. And then did nothing with that command point. I didn't want to charge anybody. I suppose I could have charged him, and maybe if I put him to flight, I could have left this guy out of command, but it didn't seem like it was worth it. I'm going to be a little more defensive here for a moment or two. Otherwise, that is the the end of the movement phase, we'll get on to the fire combats. Very little fire exchange at Quatre, just because of the proximity of the forces. The British Guards got some fire onto that dwindling French Lancer regiment, but otherwise no blood drawn. French were able to get off a little bit of artillery fire that was ineffective. Much more effective here at Ligny. Started off with some artillery that drew some blood on the cavalry here. As we swing over towards the villages, see a whole lot of casualty markers. Most of them, since they're away, are for the Prussians. So we see this line here has all but been removed of Prussian forces. Casualties sparked morale checks and retreats. This unit, retreated back to here, but these had nowhere to go and were forced to surrender. So big losses there. Another big casualty in a retreat. And the French are likely going to just make a big step forward right along this side, busting up the Prussian 5th Brigade pretty effectively there. Moving along the line this way, the Young Guard didn't get the casualties they wanted on their targets, but did get one, so that'll help. And the French are just sort of slowly grinding down the Prussians there. On the other hand, the Grand Battery took a chance, prolonged forward, and the Prussian fire was able to suppress all of the French guns, so they didn't get any shots off this turn. And when the artillery shit is pulled, they won't get to shoot then either, because they'll still be suppressed. But they're in good shape for next turn. They should be able to wipe out almost the rest of the guns here for the Prussians. But that's making lemonade out of lemon there. The last shots were here on the east side. This Fusilier battalion actually got a hit on those skirmishing cavalry. They passed a morale check, but otherwise the French were not in good position to put any fire on anyone. This gun doesn't have a good target. They couldn't. There's no point in suppressing artillery at this point because they've already had their turn. And these guns were able to put another casualty on those Uhlans, and they routed, retreated. So fairly good fire for the French, and the Prussians bought themselves some time by suppressing that Grand Battery. Now we will move on to our assault phase. No assaults at Quatre, but we have several here at Ligny. The first ones, however, are going to be assaults into open hexes. So they can just advance and occupy those hexes. I think I'll advance this one. And we have another one right there. Just advance him. Not a great place to be. He's right against that walled farm. Not even sure where the gate is on that one, but there are no contest advances. I'll go ahead and make our assault right here. In this case we have one increment remaining of that light company. And we're assaulting it with 2 increments. This is not a good assault. So that'll be 2 to 1. We'll see if anybody passes this pre-melee morale check. Well, both sides pass their morale checks, and they go to melee. They roll a blank, even taking into account the leader bonus for the Prussians, and that's a 1 loss for each side, and that'll be the last increment there of that company. So we're just going to get rid of them, bump the leader. Guess he has his choice here. Take a casualty and advance. Now they did pass their morale check, so I think that's what should happen. So there we are. And the leader jumped back. couple hexes. So the 5th Brigade is getting pushed pretty hard now for the Prussians. So that'll bring us over to the attack of the Young Guard. French have pretty high hopes for this one. They've got 12 increments to 6, I believe, there. That'll be a 2 to 1. I'm going to assume the Guard are going to pass. We'll check for the defense here. Well, both sides pass. They go to melee. 2.5 1-to-1 odds. We roll poorly and get a blank. So that is a casualty and morale check for both sides. And if you can believe it, the Guard failed their morale check. Gah. So they will take their casualty and run. I can't count on anybody these days. I gotta retreat 4 hexes. I gotta move them right there. I got a lot of morale checks to check on there. So that's a drag. They end up right here after retreating and then displacing. So the Guard fails in their first effort. We'll see how the next one goes here. Maybe they can go against some landwehr with some success. That'll be 11 increments against 5. Another 2 to 1. So we'll see. The landwehr will stand. Both sides pass their pre-melee morale check. The odds are 2 to 1 on the melee table. And we rolled a 1 casualty for the French and a morale check and 2 casualties for the Prussians. Guard do pass that morale check, so we're just going to end right where we started. Had high hopes for those Young Guard. They did not come through for us. So we'd hoped to collapse this whole elbow of their line right there and did not get it done. That being the last of the French assaults, we'll just finish off the French chit with the rally and reorganization segment. And that'll leave us with really just the activity chits left. Occasionally the order of draw for them is important, so we'll look at that. Drew the leaders. That's cool. So we'll shift our leaders around and see what happens. After moving a few leaders around, pull some chits, reinforcements. Actually, we're going to do 2 things this turn with reinforcements. Or maybe 3 things. First, at Quatre, we have this artillery that's been sitting here for a long time. We're just going to try to get them on the board. Let's see, well, I'll get them to there, and their wagon, and that one there. Second thing is, we have a leader who is going to return. The 2nd Dutch Belgian division leader. Since both his brigade leaders are on the field, this doesn't really matter much, but we're going to enter him. He entered from the road to Brussels and ended up right there. No big deal. And the last reinforcement will be this recovered Prussian artillery battery. They lost 3 of their heavy guns, so we were able to reclaim 1 of them. And with that done, we can draw some more chits. We've got regroup and artillery remaining. Regroup. And actually artillery is not remaining because I don't think we have anybody left to fire. Well, we can try the Prussian howitzer maybe. No, they're out of ammunition, so we will throw our last little chit, regroup. Regroup. So for the longest time I had this French battalion trapped right here. He was stuck in a bunch of zones of influence. Now he was not. So regroup, I just moved him to there. Seems kind of odd. I mean, wouldn't he be better off sort of crossing the creek and getting away? But nope, he's going to stay on the board, so that's where I moved him. Otherwise, no big movements for a regroup, and with no artillery available to fire during the artillery chit, that basically means our cup is empty and we can go to the end of turn phase. The 7 p.m. was pretty quiet here at Quatre. For the most part, we just tried to form up the British right, and really can kind of see a line forming now along the east to west here. The French tried to pull back and with the remnants of the 6th Division form a line there in front of the woods. But otherwise, they didn't have any other command to spend. They're trying to get some heavy cavalry over here to help this flank, but nothing much going on. Very little fire, no melees, no charges. We had all that going on at Ligny. Here in the east of Ligny, the Prussians spent the bulk of their command. They started out with a charge over here, trying to break up the French cavalry here. They then moved their artillery into position. Actually had a successful assault here by Landwehr. And got some forces across the creek right over here. So they are trying to move forward against the French cavalry. The French did not spend much in the way of command over here, so they couldn't really respond this turn, but I think they see what's coming and they're going to act accordingly next turn. The Prussians also fared pretty well in the center of the line. They suppressed all the French guns of that Grand Battery with counter-battery fire, and they repulsed an initial guard attack. So these two Prussian battalions remain stoutly in place, resisting the advance. That Landwehr cavalry also charged and ran off and destroyed some ammunition wagons. Got themselves in a tough spot here. It's going to be hard to get out of there. They should actually have next turn they'll have an out-of-command marker on them. But that was the end of the good news for the Prussians. Here on the right, or the left of the French here, did not go very well for the Prussians. Took a lot of casualties and a lot of retreats. See, this whole area sort of collapsed. This line gave way, and the French 10th Division could advance and fill it, if not, the next turn, perhaps the turn after. But the Prussians aren't in terrible shape. The 5th Brigade is kind of starting to crumble, but they still have the 6th Brigade in position here to fill those gaps and stem the tide. So what next? We'll have another division of the 1st Corps arriving next turn, I believe, arriving here. That's going to put a lot of pressure on what is really only a cavalry force for the Prussians out here on their flank. And the French are running out of time. At 7 p.m. they can fight till 10:20 p.m. So they have to make some really strong efforts while they can. One of those efforts will be on the left here with the 1st Corps. The other effort is going to continue to be with the Guard here in the center. And hopefully that Grand Battery will be back, unsuppressed next turn and be able to make short work of the guns in front of them. Now the Prussians can't just sit there and watch that happen. So they're likely going to try to precipitate that with an infantry attack of their own. That's probably suicide, and it might give away the whole brigade and the whole center of the line. But they can't wait. If they wait, they're going to get crushed. And that kind of leads to their last best hope, which is the 3rd Corps in the glare of the sun over here. They will be pushing hard at that French cavalry, those dragoons. They've closed the gap some, meaning the dragoons, even if they do charge, won't have the benefit of a head of steam. And now that they have this big gun line in front of them, it'll be harder for the cavalry to charge through that as well. Probably should have been the first effort expended hours ago, but they're getting it done now. And perhaps this brigade here will also be able to continue across the stream and put pressure in that gap between the second and the first reserve cavalry. But all that requires a lot of expenditure of command here for the Prussians. So they're likely going to be continuing to put 2 or 3 command points here and then 1 in the center. If they have to, they'll start putting 1 on the far right, that cavalry as well. But that's how it's shaping up. Let's take a look at Quatre and see what might happen there. I think the plan for the British is clear. These brigades that way. They have trouble with their morale levels, but it's probably their best chance to push this aside and possibly get on the flank of the French in the center. Their left is probably too weak to do anything, and at best they might be able to sort of slowly advance just to pin these units there. For the French, just hold on. We'll probably get the rest of the reserve cavalry shifted over to here. Try to get the 2nd Cavalry out of here, down into a position where they might be able to make flank charges or threaten them from the flank. Might have to pull back a little bit towards the crossroads just to shorten their lines. That kind of leaves the question of what to do with the 5th Division here. I don't see any good reason to try to advance them. They can't really attack very effectively. The one thing they could do is to form a line here and release this brigade to go this direction. That's probably the best plan for the French at this point. So we'll throw 2 more turns out and then check in at the, I guess, 2000. That'll be the 8 p.m. turn, and see where things stand.